What is up, guys? So today we are back with another deep dive, and I'm just gonna be straight up honest with you. The title, the thumbnail, it's all just clickbait. This was like the most requested Pokemon, but there was no way for me to fit our actual subject today in when you guys wouldn't vote for it. So today we're gonna be looking at Suicune. We're actually gonna take an entire 20 minutes to talk about Suicune. It's gonna be amazing. Here we go. I'm just kidding. Everybody seems to be hating on Suicune. There's like a couple of people out there that actually want to see that deep dive. So it possibly could happen, but it was just a joke. I'm sorry if you were really looking forward to that. So today we're actually going to be looking at Politoed, which is a pure water type Pokemon, maxing out at level 40 with 15s across the board at 2449, which makes it an amazing Ultra League candidate in my opinion. So with a 0-1 attack, 15 defense, and 11 stamina at level 23.5, you can hit that exact 1500, which is pretty nice. Now, according to my spreadsheets and all the numbers that I have ran, Politoed should rank around 20th in bulk and 16th in stat product, which is fairly good. I mean, it's a lot better than a lot of the other things we've looked at. And of course, that does come from our base stats here, a 174 on attack, 179 on defense, and 207 on the stamina, which is just, oh, that's a very good stat spread there. Now, when it comes to our moves here, since we only do carry one typing, we don't really have like a whole lot of stab candidates. We do have 3 in total out of our 6 moves, so that's pretty good. So let's start here with our fast moves. We have Mud Shot for 4.5 energy per turn. You get a damage and a half per turn, which is, that's respectable. I mean, everybody loves Mud Shot for the energy gain, not for the damage, you know? Then we move on to Bubble for 3.67 energy per turn. You do get 2.67 damage per turn. Now, after you do factor in stab, it does bump up to this 3.2, which is pretty respectable. A lot of people end up enjoying Bubble because of its well-roundedness. It's pretty even on energy, pretty even on damage there. Out of those two moves, I really think that it depends on which way you're taking your Politoed, and that kind of dictates which one that you're going to choose here. If you're going for speed, I mean, Mud Shot is a no-brainer, but if you are going for more of that specialist role and you want to kind of like use Politoed as a fire killer, then Bubble makes a lot more sense there. Mud Shot, while it does hit most of the fires for super effective, it doesn't hit all of them, so Bubble may be a little bit better in that specialist role, but I definitely think that Mud Shot is the way to go in general, just for the sheer speed, but that's just my play style. Now, in the charge move areas, we do have 4 different charge moves here. We have Hydro Pump, which is a stab candidate. For 75 energy, get 130 damage at a 1.73. After stab, though, it does get bumped up to 156 on the damage for a 2.08, which is pretty nice. Then we do have Blizzard here. For 75 energy, we get 130 damage at a 1.73. It's literally Hydro Pump without stab, and it's an ice type move. Then we have Earthquake. For 65 energy, we get 120 damage at a 1.85 damage per energy ratio, which is always great. No stab, of course. Then we have Surf here. For 40 energy, we get 65 damage at a 1.63, but after stab, it does get bumped up to the 78 damage for a 1.95 on the damage per energy ratio. So, whoa, that's pretty sweet. Out of those moves, so Surf seems like the no-brainer to me. It's super low cost. It's got decent damage, but it's just spammy. Especially if you're going to be running Mud Shot, you're going to be able to get to this Surf in 5 seconds. You're going to be able to fire Surf in 5 full seconds. Like, that's pretty nuts. So, Surf definitely seems to be the best spam type move. Plus, it is a water move, so that you can kind of take Hydro Pump and just kind of set it to the side for now. But then it comes down to Blizzard or Earthquake. That one's kind of weird. So I do think that Earthquake is the more enticing move straight off the bat because it will hit most things neutrally, at least in the cup. There are a couple of outliers there, but I think that most of the time it would be a great neutral move. If you already have some type of ground type coverage, like if you are actually running Earthquake on your Quagsire, or if you actually have Earthquake on another Pokemon, then maybe Earthquake here would just kind of be redundant and you wouldn't necessarily need it. that may usher in Blizzard to make a little bit more sense, because Blizzard is actually going to be able to help with the grass type matchups if you get caught with your pants down. But for the purposes of this video, I actually did choose Mudshot, Earthquake, and Surf, only because it did actually put up some of the best numbers that I saw. So I definitely wanted to take a look at those matchups rather than using the Blizzard matchups. I do think that an Ice type move is a little bit more common probably than the Ground type move, so we're gonna go with that. You understand. So of course, me being a dummy, I totally wanted to use Mudshot, Earthquake, Surf for these simulations, and for some reason my first iteration, literally what I wrote up here, somehow I was using Bubble. So forgive anything on this board that you've seen before now, but it all has been corrected. So let's actually go over these numbers really fast. So in our shield situations here, we do have a 0 versus 0, which is where I don't have any shields, my opponent doesn't have any shields, kind of like a closing type situation, if you will. We actually end up winning 56.5% of those. Pretty nice. Now in our next one, we actually have a 2 versus 0, which is where I have both shields, my opponent doesn't have any shields. We actually end up winning 90.2% of those, which is just great. But I'm not actually worried about that 90%. I'm actually worried about if I can't beat that Pokemon with 2 full shields, which Pokemon is that? And to no one's surprise, a lot of the grass types show up here. Oddly enough, Mantine can show up here if it has Bullet Seed, but we know that that's not good. So in our next shield scenario, we have a 0 versus 2, which is where I don't have any shields, but my opponent actually has 2 shields. We actually end up winning 8.7% of those matchups, which those are actually the ones that I'm concerned about. And here you'll find a couple of the fire types, not all of them, but a couple of them, and Pinecoat. Next we'll move into our last shield scenario, which is this 2 versus 2, which is kind of where I have both shields, my opponent has both shields, kind of like a opening type situation, if you will. We actually end up winning 58.7% of those, which is fairly nice. And what does that say? Well, considering that we win a couple of more percent here than we do in our closing type situation, it probably is better to open, but considering that they're so close, I don't think you'll have a problem. Because it does have that Surf for the spam whenever you open, plus it actually has that Earthquake for the closing type matchups. I mean, it's got it all, man. Getting into our matchups here, we're actually going to go into PV Poke here. You're going to see Politoed, Mudshot, Surf, Earthquake there on the left, 1 shield for us. Then we're going to have a custom group set up with the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon here, 1 shield for them as well to kind of give the most evenness. Once we hit battle, you can see 11 wins and 4 losses. So let's actually go through these. So Lantern is a win, that makes a lot of sense. Shuckle's a win, that's pretty much a given. Tentacruel, that's great. Ground type damage is actually gonna be pretty good there. Then we have Hidden Power Water Suicune, Hidden Power Bug Suicune, Hidden Power Ground. Then we have Lapras, Dugong, Azumarill, and then Extra Sensory Suicune and Snarl Suicune. The only one we actually end up losing to is the Hidden Power Grass Suicune. Then we actually have our other losses, which are Fortress, Mantine, and Jumpluff. Whoa, that's actually a pretty dominating spread. 7 out of the 10. This little freaking frog can do some damage here. So now let's actually move into our countering section here, so countering is just kind of meaning that if we have a green typing up here, we want to actually be focusing our attention on that typing with our Politoed, whereas if we have a red typing, that kind of means that we want to look out for those Pokemon, or if you're thinking about countering the Politoed, those Pokemon would actually be the ones to take. So with our first typing here, let's actually look at the bug types, and beforehand with Bubble, this was pretty much a landslide. I mean, we only had like a couple of losses here, but now this is a lot closer. So Pinecoat, Butterfree, Ladian, Heracross, Ariados, and Yanma are our clear wins there, with Ariados and Yanma being really, really tight. But Pinsir and Scizor are both ties, and then Fortress, Venomoth, Beedrill, Parasect, and Scyther are all losses. So we do actually have 1 more win, then we do a loss, so I will kind of say that it's generally okay to go up against the bugs, but I mean the bigger ones that like people are all talking about, Fortress, Beedrill, Venomoth, there are a couple of Yanma fans out there. I mean the majority of the like meta picks are pretty rough, so bug type is going to be kind of wishy-washy there. Next, we're going to get into our fire types, and I do have all written up there. As you can see, not a single fire type is going to give us any problems here, which is always great. Beating an entire typing is just, it feels so good. It feels so good. So fire type, no problem. Now let's actually jump down to this water type. Because I had incorrect information, I didn't want to have to rewrite everything, so I just put the water type there at the bottom. Now beforehand with bubble, this one was kind of split 50-50, but now this one shows up a lot better. I mean, you can see we only have a handful of losses here. Suicune, Kingdra, Slowpoke, Poliwrath, Mantine, and Gyarados are all losses. We do have a couple of ties here with Seaking, Quagsire, ourself. So those are like kind of matchups, like not really excited for those, but the fact that we tie against Quagsire, that's pretty sweet. Now I'm not sure which moveset it's preferring here. Mudshot, Earthquake, Stone Edge. So if we actually give it, let's just say Sludge Bomb, it does end up losing that one. And if we give it Acid Spray, it does end up winning that one. So kind of a toss-up on the Quagsire there. Sometimes you may win, sometimes you may lose, depending on the moveset. But nonetheless, that's a pretty big feat to come over a freaking Quagsire there. And then some of the notable matchups here. So we have the Lapras, the Slowbro, the Slowking there are pretty tight. The Azumarill, of course, is a win. I mean, from there, it's pretty sweet on the win side. I mean, Lantern is a big one, but I mean, with our ground type damage, it's not able to really do a whole lot. So the water typing is actually looking pretty good. Next, let's actually look into our electric typing, and beforehand, this one was kind of rough, only having 3 wins. But as you can see here, this is pretty good. Magnemite, Ampharos, Lantern, Chinchou, Flaffy, Electrode, Electabuzz are all wins there. We do tie up against both the Magneton and the Raikou, but we only have 3 losses with Jolteon, Raichu, and Zapdos. Holy cow. So this dude is literally tearing through tons of Pokemon. Literally tons of just random Pokemon that, I mean, that's great. That's actually a really strong spread there. Now getting into our worst matchups here, as you can see, the grass typing is pretty lackluster though. We do end up losing against every single one of them. We do tie up against a Celebi for what it's worth, but a Pokemon without any grass type moves in the grass typing. Venusaur is kind of close, Ivysaur is kind of close, Execute, I mean, it actually does get close to a couple of these, but in general, it's pretty much a bad time for grass types. So, I mean, in total though, this guy, holy cow. So all in all, I am extremely impressed with Politoed. I definitely think that if you have Earthquake, because it is a legacy move, if you have Earthquake, then definitely try that build out. Mudshot, Earthquake, and Surf is nuts. It does put up some really strong numbers there, so I definitely think that that it would be really interesting to actually have one myself. I don't, so I won't be able to run it, but I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, what else can I say? That's big. That's huge. So that is actually it for today, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. Always remember that if you have a deep dive that you're looking forward to see, like maybe a Suicune deep dive, you can put it down in the comments below. If not, you don't have to. But always remember that if you like to like videos, you can do that. But if you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down there anyways. And until our next video, I will catch you then.